Welcome back into another episode of Making the Leap. We're so glad you're here with us today. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while, just kind of, thinking in my head how we're going to do this, because we're now at 1 year for the podcast, but 2 years of having our daughter Anna, who we have with us today. 2 years of having her finishing up middle school, on her way to high school, which I won't lie, it makes me a little choked up, but we've covered a lot of ground in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so we've had a senior graduate at our house.
Yes.
From public high school.
Uh-huh.
We have
One
a
about to
junior
become a
senior, and then Anna, our youngest, who is kind of the basis for this whole podcast and our show, who's been here. How long has it been? Since
2 years.
2 years in, but
yes.
Early in our podcast? I can't remember how long ago it was we talked to you last.
It was a year ago. It was a year ago because we talked to her at the end of 7th grade, and now we're talking to her again for the end of 8th grade.
Golly.
So it's been a year.
Okay.
She was with us at our live event and spoke a tiny bit there, but other than that, we haven't had it's kind of an annual event maybe having you here. So this is your second time on with us.
It's interesting. Middle school seems to be the point of demarcation where I talk to parents who say either they make the decision to move into a Christian school, or they don't, or they're just, I mean, it's like there's something about elementary school seems easy, high school seems often like a non-starter, but it's middle school age where parents seem to be kind of caught in the middle. Some kids resist it or don't want to go, and I don't know if we asked that the last episode, Anna, but I'd ask you that, like going through 7th and 8th grade, how many kids do you think came to your school because they wanted to be there versus their parents thought it was best they go?
Came to my school or like came to my class? Because I don't know if I could tell you school-wide.
But the whole school. Yeah,
well, I just mean based on the kids that you know that are your age, how many of them wanted to be there versus their parents wanted them to be there?
I'd say the most, majority of the kids, it's their parents. Like, I know some kids who are really, really resistant to being there and then, leave the next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you think kids have to be of a mindset to go to Christian school on their own, or do you think parents can force that to happen and kids can learn to like it, if you're honest about it?
I don't think that forcing a kid, if they really, really don't want to go, then forcing a kid to go is not a good idea, because it just, it's a super negative experience, and you don't want to be, you don't want it to be a negative experience for kids.
So thinking of some of the people that you have come across that have entered in maybe same time as you, maybe a year or two before you, maybe in this last year, that it's not been the negative. Let's say they're kind of on the fence. They don't really want to leave their school, but they understand their parents are saying this is important and why. So thinking of some of those kids, what do you think has been the best influence for those kids? What's caused a change to the point that they're now like, all right, this is okay. I'm not only am I comfortable, I'm enjoying it, or I'm ready to stay and I don't want to leave. What do you think are some of the factors that lead into a positive change? So forgetting the ones for a minute that do not want to be there, think about the ones that are like, all right, my parents moved me, but it's okay. What's been the positive? What are the reasons for that positive change?
Other kids, I think that was what it was like for me also. The second you get into the school, everybody is, well, maybe I guess it's not the same for everybody's school.
Well, it's for your school, so you focus on your school.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But definitely the kids, because they're so welcoming and so positive about things. I mean, not all the time, because kids are kids, but yeah. So kids. So
what role then do the teachers play? If the kids are friendly and welcoming, what do some of the teachers do that also encourage that acclimation to that switch, that adjustment from public school to a private, to a Christian school? Are there things that teachers can do, or things that you've seen teachers do?
I mean, the teachers 9 times out of 10 are nicer than public school teachers. I think they like what they do more.
Okay.
And they you can truly tell that they care about you and what they're teaching. They again 9 times out of 10, not all the time, but
Well, that's good. So it's positivity with students, positivity with teachers. That's good.
We haven't rehearsed this in any way, by the way, so I want you to know when you listen or watch. We don't. We asked Anna to come and sit in. She doesn't know what we're going to ask her. We don't really know where the conversation goes. So there's never like I don't ever want anybody thinking like we talked this out at the house.
Right.
We really don't know where this conversation is going to go, which always interests me. You said during our live event, and I didn't know this, and I've thought a lot about it. You said you had no relationship with Christ, and in fact, you thought you kind of even doubted it. Prior to going to your school. Is it school that made you think differently?
Yeah. I mean, I heard so many stories about people's like coming to God moments. And I learned about other people's walks and how people's walks can be so similar to mine. And like just like how drastically people have changed, and like it just made me feel like I could change too.
Do you hear those from adults, like those experiences from adults and kids? Is it primarily just kids? Is it a variety of people?
Well, you hear it, I think I heard it first from adults, but then like once you get closer with the kids, then they like open up a little bit and they'll share, because it's not like a shameful thing if you are having doubts about your relationship with, or doubts about God, or like struggling with your relationship with Christ. It's not like taboo. It's like that's okay, because like everybody struggles.
That's good. I think that's one thing that's really I don't know if impressed is the right word, but has made an impression on me are the times over the last 2 years, but probably more specifically over the last year, where you've said, you know what, so and so was over and we were talking about heaven. And that's not something that you would have, I think, had that conversation 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I believe some of that knowledge and ability to speak to that probably, hopefully, has come from conversations that we had, but I think it's probably come more from conversations you've had at school.
Yeah.
Are those conversations things that you're feeling more comfortable with now? Do you look for those situations, or do they just kind of fall in your lap?
Depends on the day. I like talking about that stuff. I like helping people understand more, because like I needed somebody like that, and I'd like to be that person for other people. And now that I have that knowledge, I like to share it.
I think that's very cool. You and I have we talk about these kinds of things in the car, like, do you have I was asking her, I go, do you have a favorite verse? And she's like, I mean, I do, but I'm not sure that I could like pull it from my head, or, and I'm like, well, I can't either. That my brain just doesn't work that way.
No.
But I love that that as a family now, we are around people who I think are pushing us to grow a little bit, to think deeply on issues and things. And I also have been having conversations with people that I never would have expected. I don't know that I could have done that as a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old. And so I think that's really something impressive, that you number one, don't have a huge fear of speaking in front of people. I think you get nervous, but you're not like, I can't do it, where you freak out. I know people like that. But I think that's something else that I don't know that we would have realized about you had we not been in this kind of a situation where you've got a microphone in front of you, or I have a microphone in front of myself. And I think that's God putting some things in our path that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, middle school is really tough. It's always the toughest. I never hear anybody, adults, when they talk about kids in school, it's not elementary, it's not even high school. I'm hearing it all the time that middle school is uniquely tough, can be vicious and mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you hear, and why do you think that is?
I think kids are just, middle school is like when you like start finding yourself, like you start figuring out like what you want to do when you get older. You start figuring out your friend groups, and you like bond, you like get those really close bonds. But I think kids are so insecure all the time, and like sometimes making other people feel bad makes you feel better.
Is that challenged then at your school now, where maybe that wouldn't have been before? I mean, kids are going to be kids, and they're going to act up, and maybe they'll mistreat one another. But is that something, if caught, it's challenged? Or by challenged, I mean do teachers or people in authority say knock that off, or there's no tolerance for that? Is that nipped in the bud, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really quick punishments, and it's like they give you grace on some stuff, but well, depending on how severe the situation is, of course. But like they give you one chance, and they say if you mess this up, you're done. And yeah.
Public speaking is something that's hard for everybody, and it makes kids nervous. You like it, but it's still hard. It's hard for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's even people that do it all the time. It's uncomfortable. Mom kind of said it. Do you think it would be as easy for you to gravitate to public speaking? And I know you lead prayer now and again in front of people. I would guess in a typical setting, in a typical middle school setting, that is not. I mean, kids tease. I remember it. I mean, kids just tease. That's what kids do. I don't necessarily mean that's a public school or private school thing.
Yeah.
But do you think you would have been less inclined to speak up if you had stayed where you were versus where you've moved to?
Yeah. Kids in my old school, I don't think. I tend to talk a lot, so kids don't really appreciate that at my old school. Like they do now. Well, not like they appreciate it. It's just, I think I've found my voice more at this school, and I just. Yeah.
How do you mean? Because you've been encouraged, or
yeah.
Kids leave you alone about it, or you can
kids
be more
definitely
unique?
don't leave me alone about it. I think. I mean, I can handle stuff like that pretty well, I think. But yeah, I've definitely been encouraged by my teachers, and they've said like, "Oh, you're smart. Like, you have a voice." And I don't think I ever really got told that in public school.
Is it is the pressure to fit in less because it's okay to be unique and individual, in your opinion, or is it? I mean, obviously there's still going to be cliques and kids are still.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it okay to be a little different?
Yeah.
Or more so
Yeah.
than it would have been if you hadn't changed schools, you think?
I think because like the idea of like God created you the way you're supposed to be, like you're supposed to be unique, and everybody has different gifts and tools that they can use. That's not really like taught or like enforced in public school.
Well, you definitely can't say that as a teacher in public school, even to believe that as a teacher, which I know a lot of people that believe that as teachers, to say the phrase to somebody else, you need to leave, so-and-so alone, or this is a skill that so-and-so has and it's God-given, and we need to honor that and respect it and find a way to help it grow. You can't throw that God-given terminology in there at all. So I think that's probably something that I think is crucial to hear, that we are made in God's image. And I think to hear that in a school setting sets things up a little differently, not to put words in your mouth and not to argue, not to, I guess, take any words out of your mouth with this, but a teacher in a public school setting cannot say that in a classroom. They cannot say those words. You are made by God, created by God, loved by God. No matter what your circumstance, no matter who you are, no matter what you're about, they can't do that. They can't do that. So I think to have you in a place where you can hear those words, you can believe those words, you're encouraged to believe those words, I think that makes a difference for people.
We talked to an officer. He is a sheriff's deputy, and he made a lot of news for talking a 7th grade boy from talking him out of jumping off of a water tower. I don't know if you heard that story or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I read all the time now, this is not new news, but the Surgeon General said last month that social media has this deleterious effect. It's, eating kids alive. It's making them depressed. Kids, particularly middle school kids, are really, really sad. Mm-hmm. To the point that they're thinking of taking in their lives, and some of them have. Why is that happening, do you think?
'Cause kids are mean, and social media can definitely play a part in that. Like, kids can I see it all the time. Like, kids can definitely bully other kids more discreetly, or like it. I don't know. It just like I think it can hurt more because other people are seeing it, and other people are agreeing with it.
You're on social media. We don't forbid it entirely.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it, but you're on it.
Mm-hmm.
How are you navigating it? How are you not feeling depressed and sad and bullied or are you? I don't know. Maybe you are.
No.
And I don't know.
No. Because I think you guys have just taught me more, like, how to just shake things off if something like that happens, which I don't think it really has yet. Or I, like, it's all about mindset, really. Like, I know what I'm seeing isn't real. Like, it's entertaining, but I also know how to set limits for myself. And I know how to, like, think for myself, like, oh, that's wrong. Like, when I see something and I'm just like, oh, it's just wrong.
And I've heard you come out of, like, things like group chats and things like that and saying, I don't want to be in that right now, or I don't want to be following along with that, or I don't want to be paying attention to that. And I'm super glad for that. And it's not to say everybody gets sad on occasion. Everybody gets, everybody has that. And everybody has their valleys and their peak, everybody has that. But it is stunning to me that it's so pervasive in so many kids. And I know kids dealing with anxiety, and they can be in the public school sector or the private school sector. I don't think, I think it is kind of everywhere. But I feel like you've got a different cushion. You've got a different support system around you now. Not that prevents everything. I don't believe it will ever prevent everything. I think that it sets a tone, and it, like I said, it puts good things in place around you. But do you see a difference with social media use? Do you see a difference in how people handle social media with your different groups of friends that are in different school settings?
Yeah. At my school, I think parents are more, kids are more limited with their screen time and stuff. But
you still know kids your age that still do not have phones or access to social media. Is that true or not really?
I not social media. No, most kids in my friend group don't have social media.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most kids have phones just for, like, communication.
Okay.
And if you had it to do all over again, honestly, like if we hit rewind before you ever got a phone, do you think you'd be better off today as you're about to become a freshman in high school at a Christian school? Would you be better off today not having a phone or not having access to social media versus having access to it?
I think having a phone isn't bad. Social media, if I could redo it, I would not get it because, like, to be honest, like, I'm, like, addicted, like, because it's designed to be that way. It's designed to be addictive. But a phone, I don't think a phone is a bad idea because you can communicate with people. I mean, it's just.
How do you mean you're addicted?
Addicted, like.
Always checking it?
Not always checking it. More just like, I mean, like, we talk about this all the time. Like, you hear a buzz or you hear a notification, you just, like, immediately, like.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Pick it up, and that's just, like, bad.
But you're good at putting it down.
I mean, could I just take your phone away? Like, if we went on family vacation, could we lock it away in the safe in the hotel and you not see it for a week?
I would not prefer it. I think I could live, but I don't think I'd want it to happen.
Your school doesn't let you have it during the day.
No.
And how does that go? Fine?
Most of the time,
You're
I mean,
used to
there's a handful of kids that are, like, carry it around with them, but then, like, once they get caught, then it just.
But you and I have managed. I mean, I say you and I because I'm the one that does a lot of the school stuff. We've managed for now 2 years to make it through the day where I just, because I think I know I just can't text her. Now I have called the school office and been like, get her a message. But I think that's fine. I think maybe they don't like it, but I feel like that's the way it's going to be handled. If there's really something I need you to know or do, I'm sure they don't prefer it, but that is the way that I have gone about it. I also think that's manageable because it's not a huge, giant school. However, I do find myself with our sons, with your brothers who have phones, I'll randomly send the text. It's almost that habit I'm able to do, whereas I just know I can't with you. So we do a lot of conversing in the morning. Don't forget this, and she's like, okay, I'll remember this. But the minute that 3 o'clock hits, I send the text. But we've managed without the phone.
Yeah.
But it's trickier for sure.
I was just speaking to a woman the other day at church. She has 2 older kids who are going to stay in public school, and she has 2 little kids, younger kids, elementary school age, I think. And she said she's decided to homeschool them. But she said it would be too much of a fight for the older ones. you have two older brothers, one who graduated and one who's about to graduate, and you're doing this differently. What do you think of that? Do you think, I mean, not that we would have, because I don't think it would have worked out well, but do you think we would have been better off if we'd forced the boys to join you and all go into a private Christian education? Or, like we started off by asking, do you have to kind of make individual decisions, do you think?
I think that would have gone downhill really quick if you put the two of them in private school with me, especially in my school, because I think that they just gravitate towards bigger crowds. And
well, you just went to your brother's graduation at a public high school. You
Yeah.
saw the public high school graduation. You've watched your brothers do prom and all that stuff. What do you think of that as you watch that, as you enter a private Christian high school experience versus what you're seeing them going through? What are you thinking?
I think it looks fun, like having a school, having a school that big, and like just like the big social events and the school events. Like it's just not as fun with like a small amount of people.
Yep.
It may be more like memorable, more special, but also like prom and things like that. Like I don't think I'm missing out really, but like I think it's something that like I'll just always wonder about.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what you just said hits the nail on the head for a lot of parents and a lot of kids. You know you're going to be fine. You know you're going to have great experiences. But you also know there is going to be something about your school experience that is going to be different. It just is.
Yep.
And that people, it's like trying to find that acceptance with it. I think you've come a long way in finding that acceptance.
Well, and also why? I mean, it's
Right.
not just arbitrarily changing it. There's a very specific
Right.
reason
That
we're
doing
doing
it.
this, right?
Yeah.
So that probably has to help. I would say that's what I think. Well, we've talked about this a lot. Parents have to I don't want to say get their priorities straight. That's not correct. Parents have to know what their priorities are, and they have to know their why as they're coming alongside with their kids, and their kids have to have a little bit of buy-in. I do think we probably would have had some struggle because that buy-in necessarily wouldn't have been there if she hadn't been the age she was at, for sure. We also had kind of talked about it in a way that I think was less scary when we were initially not going to move, but we were going to make this school switch. There were still some things that had stayed the same. So she had a little bit more time to get adjusted to it. And it was you who said, I think I want to try a smaller school.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because we were changing states, we were changing houses, we were changing so much that I think that was a little bit of a security piece of things. And that helped us, no doubt. It helped us out in this transition, but we knew our why. We've conveyed that often, and I think the buy-in, while slower, has come along from you, I think. I mean, I think that's
I will say something pretty cool. You had two friends who were older than you by a couple of years, and you went out with them. One of them drove, and you stayed the evening with them. I don't remember ever being, not even a freshman, I don't remember being an 8th grader having friends who were juniors in high school.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool aspect about my school is that you can bond with kids of all ages. Like I walk past kids in the hallways, like my friends' younger siblings, like I see them and I always give them hugs or like high fives. And then kids in high school, I always see them like in their groups of friends, and like I think it's just fun.
That's
yes.
I don't think that's very common, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think
No.
that's very common. In
I
most,
didn't, maybe a year older,
Yeah.
but that 8th grade to high school
Yeah.
year, no way, right? 8th graders were young, and the high schoolers were totally different. And I was still nervous about it. I wasn't like crazy nervous about it, but I was still like, hold on a second. I'm not sure I know who these people are, and I did, the mom stuff. I texted, I made contact, made sure everything was fine. But I thought, what a great advantage to have that built in, because it isn't just an 8th grade to high school. If that path continues, she knows people now that are 1, 2, 3 years younger, that as they're moving through middle school and into high school, that relationship has been established, so that when you're a senior and these kids are coming up as a freshman, you've been hugging them and high-fiving them for the last 4 or 5 years. That's tremendous. And it goes a lot to that family atmosphere that, again, it's smaller, it's different, it's not going to look like the high school graduation of 250, which was a lot smaller than my high school graduation of 425. It is different, but that's a benefit that
well, there's
never
also,
would I have imagined.
Here's another component. I wonder, do you feel responsible to the younger kids coming up? There seems to be in your school, I think, amongst older kids, this leadership thing. And I don't know if that's taught or that's implied, that the older kids, I won't say responsible, but have an obligation to be shepherds, sort of. Is that true?
Yeah. There's actually for football in high school, the kids that are doing it, they volunteer in elementary classrooms, and they like read books and spend time with the kids, and it's just like fostering this like cohesiveness between everybody.
I think that's really great, and I would hope that there'd be some other organizations that would do that too.
Yeah.
You also joined something called the Student Advisory Committee this year, which was something you had to apply for. And you're one of the youngest. You are the youngest, is that right? You are the youngest on it. Can you talk a little bit about what that group does? What's the purpose? What do you do with that?
Yeah, so we kind of are just like the like eyes for the teachers, or not the teachers, the like leaders of the school. And we kind of just like they ask us like, where do you think the faith, like what do you think the faith level is in your grade? Like, what do you think kids are struggling with? What do you think they're excelling in? And we kind of talk about the rules and like from a student's standpoint, like what you think is wrong with the rules, or what do you think is like good about these rules, and we can help change them, and we can make proposals to the parent advisory board and like just like the board of the school about different courses we want, or how we want to change a few classes a little bit, things like that.
I think that's fascinating too, because that's a little different from student council, which, you know, I know they're two different entities, but I think these are some unique ways that schools, it's good that they're doing it. And if you're in a private school setting, I think you need to have these things where you have that communication between the students and the school leaders, the administration, the parents. You have to have that, you have to have those conversations. And I really think it's neat that that's provided. And I brought it up only because there was an age thing. Like one of the meetings that you went to, you know, I drove you there, and the others all drove themselves. Yeah. And you were like, hello, you know, just kind of like, here I am, I'm in 8th grade. But they listened to you. You never came out of there like, I just sat there and didn't say anything. Like, you had conversations and you were talking. And that's a really neat piece of coming back to that idea that God has made all of us with value to share and to offer, and that is being facilitated. And I respect that greatly. And I do know there are scenarios, there are things that people try that in a public school setting. I think when you've got maybe a smaller school setting, it's probably a little bit easier for sure. But big school settings, I don't remember that at all. I don't remember knowing, oh, that person is on an advisory committee and that person goes and talks to these adults and they meet. And if it did exist, I certainly wasn't a part of it, or I didn't even know how to become a part of it. I really value those opportunities that you've had. Which
you also won an election. You decided to run for office, and you won.
Yeah, I ran for what's it called? Oh my gosh.
Well, you ran.
I don't know. Student
Yeah.
representative, and I ran against. There's actually two student council representatives are elected, and then one president for your class, and so there were two candidates running for president, and then like there was like 5 of us maybe running for representative, and me and this other kid got elected for representative.
Would you have ever run for office, do you think, had you not been in this setting? Maybe you would have. Maybe you're interested in that anyway, but do you think that why did you decide to? Some kids don't do that. They don't like to, but you've chosen to publicly speak, publicly run. You think that's something you always would have done anyway?
I think it just kind of depended on, I think this sounds like really awful, but like my level of popularity in my old school, because I think things like that are kind of just popularity contests. Not saying that it makes me feel good about myself that I got elected. Like, I think, like, kids, like, know that I'm
they
a
like
leader.
you, sure.
Yeah. And,
So you're saying you think the election you won here at your school is not so much just about being a popular kid. It's
No.
about actually doing a job well, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah. But at, like, in public schools and things like that, I think, yeah, it's definitely more of a popularity contest, and I was not very well liked in my old school.
Well, and it's hard. I think, everybody, again, when you're in bigger schools, it's easier to form cliques, and then you kind of stay where you are. I stayed with my little group. I told you, I've said it multiple times, I definitely, I think, wore that nerd label through middle school and high school, and I was fine with where I was. I never, it didn't bother me. Looking back, I was quite glad I was actually with the people I was with. I think that was that was a good place to be, and I had fun and I enjoyed myself. But I just never, I guess pushed beyond kind of what I knew. And I think I see you in places where there are adults around you, not just necessarily in school, but outside of school settings, that are saying, you could really do this. You could really go down this path. I know you've talked a little bit about mission trips, which is something that is not on my, it's not in my comfort zone at all, but it is something that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And that's not coming from me. That's not coming from me. I think you're hearing things in chapel. I think you're hearing things from other students, from kids that have graduated, from adults. I'm not the one saying, like, pack up and go.
Yeah.
So I like that you have access to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Are there things that have been put in your mind about your future that you would never have thought of had you not been at this school?
I mean, probably not. But, like, I don't know. I mean, mission trips I've wanted to do since I was little, because I would watch my older brothers go on mission trips, and I was like, that's just so cool. Like, I want to do that too. So I've always wanted to do those. What I want to do in the future, though, I think I would have figured it out. I feel like it would be pretty much the same.
As you're saying, you think you would have found your path eventually, even if we had not moved you, which I think is completely valid. I do think people do figure things out. What do you think, what skills do you think you have now in your arsenal of tools? What do you have now that maybe you wouldn't have had?
Yeah,
3 years
or
ago,
just
4 years
generally,
ago?
what would be different, do you think, if you could imagine 2 years not having been in this Christian school setting, 2 years pass, and what would have been different?
Well, I think I'm a lot nicer to people now. I was not always the sweetest, I think, because I have to be nice, because then, that's just not.
Are there things that make you want to be nice?
Yeah.
Like, is that,
I mean, people are nice to me. Like, normally I think it's a bad habit, but I think when people are rude to me, I'll be rude right back, and it's.
I think you come by that a little naturally.
Yeah.
That is something I have also worked on.
I'm definitely better at talking to people now. My social skills have improved a lot. Like, I didn't know that making eye contact was a thing of, like, a respect.
Yeah.
And I know how to shake people's hands properly now, because I was taught how to do that in, like, fax class. And just, like, etiquette things, I know now. Etiquette things.
That's right, but I think
So you feel less defensive, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like, you felt like more on edge as
Yeah.
a student before you got to where you are now?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good, because I think when you talk about being less defensive, I also think there's a little bit of peace about you. I think there's a little bit of assurance about you, which I believe comes from a faith.
Yeah.
I think you've talked a lot. I think the things that stick out in my brain the most are when you'll come home and you'll say, Mom, chapel was really good today. And you don't always tell me exactly what was spoken about. I think it's more of a private experience for you sometimes, but I feel like you're gaining some of that peace along the way with each of these different experiences that you've had. I've been so grateful for that opportunity, because I think that is one of the things that's going to serve you well.
You told me about an experience, and I won't go into personal details, but you said to us about an experience you had through your school. It wasn't during the school day, but it was through an event. And you spoke of feeling what I told you, I believe, was the Holy Spirit, a warmth.
Yeah.
You said you felt very overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that.
Well, it was Raise Up. It was Raise Up, Rise Up when this happened. It was an event of all women, and I had just spoken kind of briefly. I was on a panel, and I was just answering people's questions anonymously about just all different. Like it was a whole range of things, like
social
yeah,
media,
social
topics,
media,
and
yeah,
health and
faith,
wellness.
whatever.
Yeah, faith. Yes.
And afterwards we were just worshiping, and my cheer coach actually pulled me and two of my other friends that I had there. She pulled us aside and she was praying over us. And then one of my friends started crying, and I'm not really like a
You're not a crier. You're not big emotional.
like what's it called? A sympathy crier? I'm not a sympathy crier.
Yes, that's fair.
I kind of just get like all like tensed up. I don't really know how to deal with that stuff, but I just started crying, and then my other friends started crying, and then like my coach was just like, "Girls, that's just the Holy Spirit." Like, and like we didn't know like what was happening because it's like, never happened to us before. And then she was like, "Why don't you pull some of the younger girls and pray over them?" And then I pulled one of my friends who was in 7th grade, and then like my other two friends pulled other girls, and we were praying over them. But like we didn't have anything specifically to say, but we just like words just started flowing, and we didn't. Like, and then we were talking about it afterwards, and my friend was like, I didn't know what I was going to say, but then like words just started coming out and they all made sense. Like that kind of thing. It was insane.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but I doubt that's something that you would have experienced before.
No.
Yeah.
I don't even know that I would have taken her to an event like that, honestly. You know, just watching that happen, watching people standing, that is not my style either. So I don't even know that I would have had her at something like that, but I did. And you know what I mean? So that's for sure. I can say if that were to have happened to you, it would have been years, I think, ahead, like years down the road, because I've only really had an experience like that once or twice. And it was as an adult. Never would I have thought like, I'm going to take my 13 or 14-year-old girl with me, and we're going to go to this women's event, which was designed for girls 12 and up, and women, I should say 12 and up. I didn't take her last year. I almost was kind of like, I don't know about this year either, and just because it didn't feel like that was something that I felt super comfortable doing. And in hearing that after, I thought, well, that was God working somewhere else.
I mean, you're 14, almost 15, and I don't know if you feel this way now. You probably don't. But I bet when you're 25 in 10 more years or 30, I wonder if you look back at being your age, like, will you think more of that than maybe the high school prom that you think might have looked more fun? Like, what will have more meaning, do you think, when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I don't think, unless I'm just like living in my high school like prime, I think I'll look back and think like I'm so much better off, and I think I'll see people plummet seriously from public school who graduate because they didn't learn the things that I did. And like, I don't want that to happen, obviously, but I'm already seeing it, unfortunately. And
you see the value in what you're doing, even if you look at some of the things on the outside and it looks maybe more interesting or even fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is, it's good. I think parents need to know that validation exists. It's not easily come by. We've had conversations of, do we stay? Do we not? We've had conversations of, should I have homeschooled? Should I not? You know, we go back and forth. I think we're very aware, but I do hear you say these things and think we're supposed to offer opportunities and experiences to our kids. And the goal is 10 years, 15 years, 5 years down the road to look back and to have her be self-aware, I think. I
I love that you liked softball and volleyball, but I'm not particularly interested in you landing an adult career in either of those. I don't think that's terribly likely, but your salvation in Christ is eternal, and that's so, maybe you didn't have access to the largest, most competitive sports, but I think when it's all said and done.
But you learned how to pray over somebody at an age where I'm still not super comfortable. I think that's.
Do you disagree? Do you disagree? I mean, you may disagree. That's okay if you disagree.
No, I think I would have. I mean, like public school teams, like it does seem like nice to like be able to play on a team that like people know what they're doing most of the time, and like
more skilled.
Yeah, more skilled. But in the long run, I don't think that like hitting a home run can beat going to heaven.
Well, that seems like a good question. Cut it in print, as they say in the business.
And I'm just so proud. I'm proud of you for doing this. I know you and I have talked before about, we started this podcast talking about our journey with you. You're now heading into high school,
and you're still not 100%.
No.
I mean, let's not make this seem too rosy. You're not like 100% in love with what you're doing at the moment.
No,
but
I don't know what percentage you'd give it.
Right.
But you know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot great about it. It's not perfect.
Right.
Probably not going to be.
Nope.
But I think doing what we're doing, the importance of it.
Yeah.
And you could tell us if you were like, I'm out, and we'd have that conversation as well. But what I was going to say was that I don't know that are we going to have you back again in a year and a year and a year. I don't know that we are, because now I feel like we're kind of, she's moving into her own place kind of a thing. And what's come from this for us has been talking with other families as they're kind of starting, or talking with other people as they're starting schools. And it's kind of morphed into this new direction. And I'm just thrilled that even through the struggles, the hard stuff of it, that you have been along with us for this beginning. Yeah. I think it's pretty amazing, good and bad. Like dress code, no dress code, prom, no prom. And homecoming, I guess I should say. There's a prom, but you don't have you have a different homecoming style. There's those things we can tackle as a family, as a group, as they come. But I love that you've been a part of this, and it's something unique that I don't. We wouldn't have had if we had stayed where we were. It would have looked completely different. So I just think this is God putting some neat things in front of us, and so I appreciate very much your honesty. And I appreciate your sincerity and your questioning and even your arguments. I appreciate, because they force us to think things through, and then they help us be better as parents.
Yeah, we're smarter because of it too, I think. So
I do mean that. I appreciate everything that you share with us, and I it's valid. It all has validity.
So we'll leave you alone, and we won't do this again unless you want to. All right?
And you're always welcome. You're always welcome.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. If you'd like to give this a comment or a 5-star review, we hope that you will. Let us know what you think about the show, always by reaching out to us on social media. A couple ways to do that.
You can always contact us. Instagram and Facebook are at Making the Leap Podcast. Right? Making the Leap Podcast. Sorry. Lost my train of thought there. Twitter is making_the_leap podcast. Email is hello@makingtheleappodcast.com. So any of those options will work. Reviews are phenomenal, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. Please rate and comment on the show, as well as subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Making the Leap.